What is the longest you've gone without knowing a person's name? Work in a pharmacy. A young woman, say late teens early 20s, came up and asked to pick up her grandmother's prescription. I said no problem. What's her name? She looked at me with a blank face, asked me to hold on and called her family. 2 years is the longest so far. I used to be a club promoter and I had a guy that bought tickets from me for every event he went to. He told me his name when I first met him, but I forgot it soon after he told me. Meeting lots of people makes it hard to remember names. Especially when I don't even know if I'll ever see them again, so what's the point of remembering everyone's names? After a certain point I saw him out partying often enough, but it was past the point where I could ask him his name without it being awkward. I had him saved in my phone as Sir Prince Albert since he told me about his piercing so that I'd know who was texting me if we ever texted each other. But I didn't think to add his name since I wasn't sure what it was, so that was no help. Eventually we ended up at a party together and some people walked in and asked, "Hey, have you seen Phil?" After not remembering meeting anyone that night named Phil, I said no, I don't think there's a Phil here. Then that guy whose name I couldn't remember came up and joined the group and said, "I'm right here. Don't worry, Screechy Pete. These guys are cool, I invited them." At that moment I finally found out his name and I played it off as, "Oh okay, well if they are your friends then I guess it's cool if they stay." And just went with it. Edit. I was a dumbass and spelled my own username wrong. Most likely over a decade. I'm in the UK and I've got to know many a bar acquaintance down my local pub. Over time you get to know about their work, hobbies, likes and dislikes. You get to know how many kids they have, how many times they have been married, etc., etc. Then a friend from out of town visits you. And as you do in the UK, you go to the pub. Lo and behold, your pub acquaintance is there and you introduce your pal from out of town only to realize you know everything about your pub pal, everything except their bloody name. I moved into my condo in 2011 and I introduced myself to my one neighbor next door to me but instantly forgot his name. We would see each other in passing for years and I would always just say hi in the casual conversation. I met my wife in 2018 from a long-distance relationship, and when she finally moved in with me there was the awkward moment when I introduced her to him. I said, "This is my fiancé, X, and we're getting married next month." He said, "Congratulations and nice to meet you." Then walked away. She asked me what his name was and I said I have no fucking clue. Later that day she said his name is Brad and I was like, "Oh, he looks like a Brad." And she said he had no fucking clue what my name was either, so no big deal. A whole school year I knew their names, I just didn't know which twin was which and they weren't identical. I work at record store. There's a guy who's been coming in weekly for the entire 11 years I've worked there. We just call him Sweaty Polish Guy. My name is apparently Darren to this nice couple who own a restaurant in my town. My name is not Darren. I've known them for 2 years. We're even Facebook friends. They can literally see and read my name. But it's cool. I always wanted to try being a Darren. I've lived in my townhouse for almost 5 years now. And I don't know the name of the guy who lives directly across from me. I have pretty regular interactions with most of my neighbors. But I've never talked with this one guy beyond just exchanging pleasantries while passing each other. When I moved in and first met him, I immediately forgot his name. I was almost positive he said it was Mike, so I went about 4 years just assuming that was probably his name. But not quite confident enough to actually call him Mike. Then a few months ago I was talking to some other neighbors in the parking lot when he walked by. And my other neighbors called out, "Hey, name that is not Mike." So it was confirmed that this guy's name is not, in fact, Mike. And I was relieved I hadn't been calling him that for the past 5 years. But I immediately forgot again what his name actually is. So now all I know is that it is something other than Mike. Maybe I'll learn his name by the time I've lived here 10 years. A whole date. Someone fixed us up but my dude never told me her name. Just the address she wanted me to pick her up. I didn't have guts to ask her name between the date. Edit. She became a long-time GF after that date and we laughed about it forever. I've been on the receiving end of this. My nickname in college was the Mayor. And I had people I had known for years coming up to me at my graduation saying, "I had no idea your name was actually Dan." My cousin gave birth to a baby girl like a year ago and I still don't know her name. Dog park people. We see each other and talk almost every day but they're always, dog's name Mum, Dad. I'm sure at some point their name come up. But I just keep forgetting. My next door neighbor introduced himself when he moved in. I promptly forgot his name. I danced around it for that same 5 years. He was from a French-speaking part of Canada, so when talking with my wife, He was French guy next door. 5 years after first meeting. He admits in a conversation that he'd forgotten my name. We have a good laugh and reintroduce ourselves. His name was Guy. I had it right the whole time. He was French guy next door. 10 years. The people from my office but from different division. They seem to know me and often call me out when I passed by. But I don't know their names and at this point it seems awkward to ask them. I'm a waiter. There are lots of customers who are regulars and I've known them for years. Some of them close to a decade. Very few of them I know their names. Some of them get nicknames amongst the staff. Some favorites are Twix Man, as he would always leave a Twix chocolate bar with the tip. Emma and Stacy, two sisters who used to come in a lot. I know their names but not which one is which. The Vegans, a young couple who were vegan but really cool. I do know their names now to be fair. My parents. 5 years at least. At work we have this old dude who drives shuttles. His name is Ron. I say, "Hey Ron," every time I see him. 5 years down the road I see Ron standing next to another old dude. Turns out we have 2 shuttle drivers. I've been saying, "Hi Ron," to the other guy 50% of the time for 5 years. Does this count? The exterminator that came to my parents' house every month to spray it had a very long Polish last name, many consonants. Few vowels. People tried to pronounce it, but just couldn't. Instead, they simply referred to him as the Bug Man. This is about a person who refused to learn my name. I'd moved away from my hometown. This dude, let's call him Matt, had started hanging out with friends of mine. I'd come back to visit from time to time. Matt would be there, and I'd introduce myself every time. This went on for about 3 years. Every single time I saw him, he would extend his hand to me for a shake and say, "Hi, I'm Matt. And who are you?" The part that rubbed me the wrong way was that he always asked, "And who are you?" I kept letting it go. Including one time at a memorial for a very close friend who had passed. Up walks Matt, extends his hand to me and says again, "Hi, I'm Matt. And who are you?" I mean, who am I? Just some dude grieving. And decided this wasn't the time or place and let it go again. Not a year later, another friend passes. This happens again at the next funeral. I'm asked, "And you are?" And I walked away this time. Later that night, some mutual friends invite me over for some drinks and to remember our lost friend. Well, guess what? Here comes Matt. Twice in one day I get, "And who are you?" My heart is broken, and this person who pretends I don't exist is questioning my existence again. I turn to the mutual friends we have. Explain to them that this is exactly what I have been telling them Matt does and it drives me crazy. So I explained to Matt that I am sick of his game and that we'd met dozens of times throughout the years. And questioning who I am in the houses of people I grew up with is hurtful and feels at times like an attempt to remove me from the only group of friends I've had since I was a kid. He admits he knew my name the entire time. And he's sorry because he claimed he was just trying to protect his friends. From what? He claimed from someone he didn't know. But also didn't bother to ask them about. Or even feign enough interest to act like a decent human. And address a friend of a friend by name. The guy around the corner I buy weed from has just been the weed guy. For 3+ years. You must not own a dog. I know all the neighborhood dogs' names. But their human counterparts? No. It's too late to ask at this point. Dating my girlfriend for a year. Still don't know her name. Premarital name knowledge is a sin. 4 years. I've been calling this dude I went to school with Wesley for 4 years. At the last day of school after 4 years, he came up to me and said, "By the way, my name is Nick." About 23 years. Didn't know his first name. That turned out to be important for me. In a weird way. He was a Marine gunnery sergeant in Vietnam. Gunnery sergeants are addressed as Gunny. I never called him anything else but that. He didn't make it back. 23 years later, I visited the wall and learned his first name. Made a difference for me. Hard to explain. Here's the story, fair warning. It's a long one. Dark. My father. So obviously like every other kid. I always called Dad, Dad. But I must have been about 6 or 7 when I learned my father's name was Roy. Everyone called him Roy. That was the name on his driver's license. I knew that was his name. When I was around 12. We moved from Texas to another state. After living there a few years we ended up taking a trip with some close friends of my parents and their kids. Now, since moving, my dad had gotten a new license in the new state. As we all sat down and waited for the plane to take off, one of the attendants came over the intercom. Will Raul come to the front of the aircraft? I can't remember the problem. But I wasn't paying attention because I didn't know a Raul. Until my father stood up and headed for the front of the plane. I sat there stunned, trying to process why my father was suddenly known as Raul. As it turns out, in Texas you can have your nickname on your license. And the English version of Raul was Roy. So for my father's entire life he had Roy put on his license. When we moved, he had to have it changed back to Raul. I once worked with a man for 3 years and didn't learn his name. Best friend I ever had. We still never talk sometimes.